Oh, I one of these days I'm gonna figure out what it is that I do that makes this thing auto record. So before I begin, I dedicate this video to my lovely wife. I recorded this 2 days ago. It came out exactly the way I've wanted it to. I have re-recorded this video for a total of 75 hours, and I'm never happy with it. This time, I'm sure it'll go well. The last one that I did a couple days ago, when I was 30 minutes into it, and my neighbor's dog that they ignore and never pay attention to starts barking at a squirrel for 15 consecutive minutes. I wasn't happy about that. I just went to see a shrink yesterday, and I got a prescription for anti-anxiety, anti-medication. I said anti-medication. Anti-anxiety, anti-depression medication. My bad. I'm pretty chill right now. And the utter rage I was feeling yesterday, where I was about to exit my tent without unzipping it, the raw heat energy emanating from my body would have just melted the rayon material, and then I would have walked through the bushes and the trees, straight through the wall, exploding like the Kool-Aid Man showing up. And I was gonna strangle that dog. I was gonna kill that dog. Like, I was just so over it, man. Which is really not like me, because I love animals. I love cats, dogs, parrots, rodents. I love rats, capybaras. I love animals, but I realized my anger was misplaced. I wasn't actually mad at the dog. I'm mad at the garbage owners that ignore it. So, I'm not going to blame the poor dog for wanting some entertainment. It's probably bored out of its mind. Anyway, hi. Preamble's out of the way. Let's talk about a game. You see, there was this thing in Japan called the MSX computer console. For all intents and purposes, it was actually just a desktop computer, but the only software that anyone made for the thing was games. No one used their MSX for word processing or anything like that. And there was a bunch of computers like that in Japan. You had the FM Towns, you had the PC-88, PC-98, the X68000. Nintendo even tried to get in on it at one point. They had a keyboard for the Famicom and a way to like program your own games for the Famicom, the Japanese Nintendo Entertainment System. These computer gaming consoles were a huge fad in Japan for a very, very long time. In point of fact, Knightmare 2: The Maze of Gallius is on the MSX computer console. Now, there's just so much to talk about in this game. It's wonderful just as a game and what it did for the gaming industry. It created the Metroidvania genre. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But like the MSX, it was just a weird system because it wasn't like there's this one company making the MSX. Anyone can make an MSX as long as they paid royalties to the company that owned the copyright and the patent for the MSX. I mean, Sony made an MSX, Hitachi, Magnavox. Everyone made MSX computer consoles. So they were pretty prolific, and there's so many different models, so many different designs, aesthetics, styles. The MSX is a really interesting and cool console. And there were 3 games, a trilogy, the Knightmare games, Knight, Nightmare, as in a royal knight, a sword knight, anything like that. The first Knightmare, check this out, it was a spaceship shooter, but you weren't a spaceship, you were just a knight. You ever play King's Knight on the NES or the Famicom? It's pretty much just Knightmare, right? You're a knight, and instead of shooting Vulcan cannons and lasers and missiles, you're throwing swords, arrows, fireballs, that kind of thing. It's Roman Greco themed. Instead of like spaceships or machines, you're fighting Hadean demons. It was cool. The thematic of it was very original, and a lot of people liked it. I still like it. King's Knight, not so much. King's Knight is garbage. Part of Squaresoft's dark history when they made really bad games. But here's what's really weird about Knightmare 2 is that it was originally going to be a spaceship shooter. It was previewed in Famitsu. They sent copies of it to all kinds of different places, and in the previews you could see it's another spaceship shooter. What would you call this? The gimmick for Knightmare 2 was, you ever played R-Type? Or any spaceship shooter where you collect power-ups to change your primary weapon. I'm using R-Type as an example. Let's say that I have the red weapon, and I want to keep the red weapon so I can use it on the boss, because the red weapon is the boss killer. But there's this really hard part of the stage where it might be better to have the blue weapon, the reflecting lasers, to help get through it so I can even get to the boss in the first place. Maze of Gallius was not originally just called Maze of Gallius. It was just Knightmare 2. And the gimmick was that you were going to have two characters that you could swap between, and each one would maintain their own power-up. So, in the case of R-Type, if I were to take that concept, I could have ship 1 with the red weapon so that I have a weapon against the boss. And when I want to clear out all the ads and the really hard enemy placements, I switch over to my other character who's got the blue weapon so I can get through the stage. That's what Knightmare 2 was going to be. And then 6 months later, after those previews, when it released, it was a side-scrolling 2D action platformer RPG. This is not a spaceship shooter. And no one mentioned that it was changing until the day it finally came out. And everyone's like, what is this? Excuse me. And it was just such a breath of fresh air. You ever played The Goonies 2? The Goonies 2 came out a little bit before The Maze of Gallius, and it was one of the reasons that the character designer for Knightmare 2, and FYI, for MSX game development, the character designer was also the game director, because the person who came up with the characters knows them better than anyone else, and character-driven games were really huge back then. So that was like Konami's thing. It was, if you came up with the game, you direct it. You tell the programmers what to do, you tell the music sound department what to do. This is your game because you came up with the characters. The character designer for Knightmare 2 decided, scrap the entire game, we're making something else. And in 6 months, they developed the Maze of Gallius Knightmare 2. Really one of the best, I was going to say one of the greatest, one of the best, one of those wonderful games of all time, because it really is. But, I mean, how can I explain a Metroidvania to you? Like, don't you know what that is? Like, you move around on kind of a grid tile-based map. You collect power-ups like max health upgrades, new sub-weapons, and a lot of items tend to have a dual effect of maybe being an attack, like maybe you can stun an enemy from far away with a hook shot in Legend of Zelda, but it also is a traversal and navigation tool. It does two things. Or like the bombs in Metroid. They blow open holes, but you can also use them to bomb jump with. Multi-purpose items. That's the name of the Metroidvania game. And again, I really don't know what I can really say about it as a Metroidvania, other than the fact that the development team for Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest, on the Famicom and Nintendo Entertainment System, they are quoted on the Wikipedia for Knightmare 2 as stating that the Maze of Gallius' design documentation was the literal blueprint that they used to create the exploration adventure aspect of Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. Castlevania 2 was also the Castlevania that Igarashi Senpai used as the inspiration for this little game you may have heard of called Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Because between Castlevania 2 and until Symphony of the Night came out, every Castlevania was a simple move from the left to the right, stage-based action platformer with no RPG elements whatsoever. So it's really not a stretch to say that the Maze of Gallius is the literal seed that germinated and eventually became what we all know and love as the Metroidvania genre. Obviously, I'm not going to excuse the Metroid games, it's in the genre title. But, like, Metroid was its own thing. No one was really copying it that much, even though people liked them. It wasn't until people started to have a fondness and desired more after Super Metroid and when Symphony of the Night came around, and it's like, this is Super Metroid with swords and magic, that everyone decided this is what we want. This is where it's effing at. The really cool thing about Maze of Gallius, though, remember what I said about what it was before? You have two characters that you play as, and you can switch between them whenever you want. Popolone, the knight that you play as in the first Knightmare game, and his soon-to-be wife, Aphrodite. Aphrodite was who you're going to go save in Knightmare 1. And the plot of it is that while you were predisposed in Knightmare 1, the evil priest Gallius snuck into your castle named Greek, the Castle Greek, and he turned it into a bewitching, otherworldly labyrinth, filled it with demons, and then, and this is my favorite part, it's in the prologue of the game, he broke into heaven and stole your unborn child's soul to imprison it in a stone monument at the heart of your castle where he awaits you. You got to go around the big old crazy castle dungeon, which acts kind of like your world map. Just imagine The Legend of Zelda 1. Because much like The Legend of Zelda 1, you have 10 sub-dungeons inside the greater dungeon that you have to go through. Much like Legend of Zelda, each one of the sub-dungeons has a couple items for you to collect. In Zelda, you collect the map and the compass and the dungeon treasure, and in later games, you collect the boss key or the big key. In the Maze of Gallius, you collect the magic wand, which doubles your... Oh, wait, the magic wand gives you infinite ammo when you're fighting a boss. The holy water doubles your damage against the boss, and the magic cape makes you take half damage from the boss. You don't have to collect them, but it will make fighting the boss much easier. My favorite gameplay aspect of the Maze of Gallius, however, is when you walk into a boss room in the sub-dungeons. The boss isn't even there. It's an empty room with an ominous tone and creepy music playing while there's like a Baphomet sigil up against the wall. And in order to fight the boss, you have to use your magnifying glass key item and examine the tombstones littered throughout the sub-dungeons, and only one of them has the boss's true demon name written on the tombstone. Remember when I said that this was on the MSX computer console? It has a keyboard built into it. You want to know how you summon the boss? You type its name. How freaking dope is that? I mean, maybe a little creepy because it plays into real world, evocation magic where you have to use the true name of the demon, but demons' true names aren't written in Roman English letters, so it's not dangerous. It's okay. As far as I'm aware, I don't know that it's actually possible to pronounce a real life demon's name without like cutting your tongue off or splitting it in half. I don't think that our mouths are actually capable of pronouncing them. And when you write their names, this is going to sound a little creepy. I know I'm talking about some occult stuff right now, but hey, whatever. In real life, an actual demon name, to write it, it looks creepily similar to a circuit board in a computer. I'm just saying, do what you will with that information. Anyway, I guess the thing that is so special to me about these games Kind of has a little bit to do with a recent review I did of these games. I played them when I was much younger, and they were cool. I liked them, but I never played Knightmare 3 because it wasn't translated into English at the time. Knightmare 3 Shalom. That is a particularly interesting game, and it's going to help tie everything up here together for me. Because I couldn't play through Knightmare 3, I recently just read someone's blog of them playing through it and just describing the things that happen and why they happen. Knightmare 3 is a top-down graphic adventure game. So this series has gone from spaceship shooter, creating the Metroidvania genre, and now the third one is a graphic adventure game where instead of just like selecting locations through a menu, there is actually a little bit of the screen where you walk around a tile-based environment to go from one area to another. And there's only 8 like combat sequences in the whole game. There's no enemies in the game. You're just talking to people throughout most of it. But the dude who was going through this, he made a comment about how there's this one part in Knightmare 3 because you as the player character, you get isekai'd into the MSX game of Knightmare 3. That's literally how the game starts. It's you and your it's not your girlfriend, but it's your female friend from school. And when you start the game, it's like, what's your name? What is the name of your female companion? So you put in the 2 names of those things. Lots of games did that back then. Heck, even Battle of Olympus. You know, you enter the main character's name, then you enter the chick's name. In Knightmare 3 Shalom, there's a part in the game where you like ascend into this realm that is somewhere between heaven and earth. And while you're there, you encounter the angelic forms of Popolone and Aphrodite from Knightmare 2. You are currently on a quest for their son, who is the now king. And there's just, when you go talk to Popolone, he says, make sure you take care of female companion name that you entered. In this case, this dude entered the name of his wife in real life. So when he got to that part of the game, Popolone tells, I'm going to make up a name just to say it. Make sure that you take care of Linda. She's very special. And the dude writing this, he lamented a little bit that he's like, I felt kind of stupid that a video game this old had to remind me how special my wife is. But sometimes just seeing those words or just hearing them is enough of a reminder. And in this dude's case, he went on to say, like, it was just a simple line of text. I don't even know if the developers really meant it to mean anything, but it made me realize that maybe I could be kinder to my wife, and maybe I should make her feel as special as she is. And in my subsequent, going through Knightmare 2, The Maze of Gallius, I guess I had kind of a similar reaction and experience myself. This is a game where when you go to collect a max health power-up, you have to decide, is Popolone or Aphrodite going to get this? And there's enough max health power-ups for both characters to reach an actual maximum health value. Each character has their own EXP meter, independent of each other, because one person's experiences are not the other person's experiences. And maybe sometimes you need a little help from each other. Maybe you get to one of those situations where Popolone is really low on health, and Aphrodite can shoot more special weapons, so you can have a greater number on the screen at a time than Popolone can. So maybe you want to weaken all the enemies with Aphrodite's long-range attacks and then go in for the kill with Popolone so he can get the experience. when you level up in this game, your stats don't actually raise. It just refills your health back to full again. But it's like that's kind of what marriage is like, isn't it? You each have your own experiences. You each have your own tale that you're both going through, but you're in this together. Your goal is the same. You're both working toward it together. And there's a little comment toward when you finish the game, and the ending sequence plays, and there's just a little message that pops up from the development team, and it says, "We promise to continue sending romantic video game messages. This story is apt to be told again when they lose faith in love." And it's just some silly little 8-bit game. Why did it affect me so strong recently? I don't really know, but it did. So yeah, I had a similar experience of just I don't know why this silly little game made me realize these very important things from my real life, but they certainly have. That's why I hold them in such high esteem. Lots of people can make video games, but the genuine love that was put into Knightmare 2, Maze of Gallius, and Knightmare 3, Shalom, evokes emotions and feelings in me so quickly and so powerfully that in ways that no other games have really ever been able to do. And I highly recommend you take the time to explore them and learn about them because they're really freaking good. Anyway, thanks for listening. Appreciate your time. Play the Maze of Gallius. God bless.